You want to always make sure that you maximize your access. Getting the basics and then having the opportunity to explore. These things do take time, and you have to be persistent.
I love hearing your story because your story is not very linear. There's turns and pivots.
Being involved in politics is not necessarily something you associate with someone who is shy.
Is there any moment where she was truly that pillar, that great partner that helped you along the way?
She's been really the rock. She's been the center.
What kept you going in that moment?
It's kind of tough, I would think. In public life, I think sometimes we think we can get a quick fix on things. That's a huge barrier to you ever being successful.
Governor DeWine, thank you so much for the time today. I wanted to actually congratulate you first and foremost on just finishing your last State of the State address. It's a big moment for you. I just wanted to congratulate you in this.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I also wanted to mention a sincere thank you. My family, we immigrated here, first generation. We had to start our life from nothing. My parents immigrated with no degrees, their degrees didn't transfer, no English. And, to be able to be here in this state, in this country is such a blessing. And thankfully to people like yourself, we're just really grateful to be here.
Well, this country has always been a country of immigrants, people who have come here, want to work, want to raise their family, want to have a better life. Mm-hmm. It still remains that country where you can do that.
Yeah. And a lot of people may or may not know your story starting off. I mean, you were loading seed bags into trucks. You were shoveling wheat. That was the beginning of your life. And now you are, one of the highest offices in our country. What do you have to say to people that don't believe that kind of story is possible anymore?
Well, my experience is just observing people is that it is. And that people who work hard generally are going to succeed. Mm-hmm. What we've really focused on is making sure they have the tools to be able to succeed. Mm-hmm. And that starts, a lot of what I talked about at the State of the State was reading and literacy. And we still have too many people in this country who can't read very well, or maybe don't read at all. And that's a huge barrier. So what we talk about is removing barriers so that people then can live up to whatever their full potential is and live their dream, whatever their dream is. Everybody has different dreams. Doesn't mean it has to be my dream or your dream. Everybody has different dreams. We want them to be able to live up to that. And that's sort of what we believe in this country. But we have to make sure that they have those tools. Mm-hmm. One of the things that holds people back is mental health problem that's untreated. And so we've really worked hard to try to deal with that, making that more accessible.
Yeah.
Same thing with the drug problem. So you have a drug problem, and you're not getting any kind of help, and maybe you haven't found the right way to go at this. Mm-hmm. That's a huge barrier to you ever being successful. So remove the barriers, allow people to live up to their full potential.
Mm-hmm. And I watched my parents go through that. They had a lot of barriers, but the state that they grew up in, that I grew up in, gave them that opportunity. I noticed even for myself, as we were growing our company, lots of barriers as a leader, so not so much, economically. And I was curious, from where you started to where you are now, was there ever a day where you were wondering if it was all worth it, where you just kind of wanted to step away and not continue, and kind of what kept you going in that moment?
Well, you kind of alluded to, my background. I grew up in a small village, Yellow Springs, about 4,000 people. Actually met my wife there in first grade. So we grew up in this small community. Her father was a builder, home builder, one house at a time. Take about a year to build a house. My family was in the seed business, and that was, we would sell to elevators who in turn would sell to farmers. And so that was our business. Started by my grandparents in the 1920s, and then my dad came home from World War II, and he took that, and along with my grandparents, my mother grew the business to. There was a company that was selling seeds all overseas and importing seeds for farmers all over, from all over the world. So, my first experience with that was just as a kid, working working in the plant, what we call the plant in the mill, and just loading boxcars with bags of seed, or sometimes a lot of times loading trucks. So it's kind of, basic work, but what you learn from a small business is how important it is to make sure you're customer friendly and that you're trying to serve your customers. So you learn those things in being in a small business. I think particularly in a family small business, you kind of learn those things.
Yeah, and I would imagine, because you mentioned your wife, you met her very early on in your life. I was reflecting, my wife and I, who we've built everything from scratch together, just like yourself. We met in grade school.
Oh wow!
And so
it's unusual.
Very unusual.
Today.
We met at church. And they say that behind every great man is a great woman. I actually had a photo that my dad took. I wanted to share with you and see what your thoughts were of this moment. If you could kind of explain what's going on there.
Yeah. So this is our grandson's wedding, and Fran and I are coming in, as you can see.
Yeah, and you have a camera there, which most people don't know.
And I do have a camera. I try to have cameras for important events, and even though we had great photographers that day, sometimes I think, well, I might catch one picture or something that somebody else is not seeing. So yeah,
absolutely. And when you're building with your wife from the very beginning, is there any moment where she was truly that pillar, that great partner that helped you along the way?
Well, I think all through my life. Once we got married, even before, I mean, we literally had our first date in seventh grade, and we're dating in high school. And then I followed her. She decided to go to Miami University, so I decided, okay, that's a great place to go. Anyway, so I followed her, and we got married between our second and third year at Miami. But she was a better student than I was. She helped me get through an undergraduate, and then I decided, to go to law school. But when we got married, I thought I was going to be a social studies teacher in high school, and that's what I told her, and that's what I thought I was going to do and be. But it didn't turn out that way. I wanted to go to law school just to see if I could do it, whether I liked it or not, whether they liked me, maybe more important. And I found out I liked it, and I found out I could do pretty well in it. So I stayed with that. But she was probably the shyest girl, or close to the shyest girl in our class. We had about 80 in our class, and being involved in politics is not necessarily something you associate with someone who is shy. And so we started campaigning, and at that point, I was running for county prosecuting attorney, running against the incumbent. We had 2 children, and so we would go out at night and knock on doors. And
really,
she would take 2 of the kids, I would take 2 of the kids, and we just go, down the street, just knocking on doors and talking to people. But at every different stage, I've done different things, run for different offices. I mean, she's been really the rock. She's been the center. She's been the person who is really grounded in reality.
Yeah.
And she can, till this day, really give me a better feel for what the average person is thinking than anybody else. She just looks at things and really sees how people are looking at things and what they're thinking and what their problems are.
Yeah. What would you recommend, for young people that are watching, like myself, that have aspirations, they want to achieve great things, but still have a strong family unit, and hopefully, like close to yourself, have many grandkids, to have that, I don't know if balance is the right word, but prioritization of, you have your duties as a governor, you have your duties as a grandfather and as a father and as a husband. How do you manage all those priorities?
Well, I think it's you first of all, as you get married, you hope you will marry someone who has the same values you do, same goals, the same way of looking at life. What's important? What's really important? And if you're aligned, it seems to me, on what you think is important, then the marriage will probably be okay, and it'll work out well. And then also that the 2 of you will be able to achieve what the things that you want to achieve in a personal life, and maybe even in a professional life as well. But I think those shared values are clearly where you have to start. If you have different values, different goals, what are we trying to accomplish? It's kind of tough, I would think.
Yeah. So when we had a chance to visit your home, and you showed us some of the photos that you were taking as a photographer, you shared some of the stories. I was curious for the audience, what is one of the most memorable photos you've taken that nobody else had access to when you were as a senator, maybe, or at any part in your career?
Well, Fran, I had a friend who was a photographer in Washington, D.C. when I was first in the Congress and the House, then I was in the Senate. So I was there 20 years in the Congress, and his name is Marty Labor, and he's a very good photographer. We used him a lot on campaigns and different things, our Christmas cards and things. But Marty always said, yeah, a lot of this is technique, a lot of this having a good eye, being able to execute, but it's also access.
Yeah.
And being in the right spot at the right time. And so, you want to always make sure that you maximize your access. My dad had a friend who was a local banker. I remember my dad, this was like 50 years ago, and there was no digital anything, really, but just a regular camera. And he said his friend, who was the banker in Yellow Springs, always, wherever he went, he had a camera. So he'd get in his car, he just threw his camera over the passenger seat or in the back. So if he spotted something as he was going down the road or something happened,
Yeah.
he had that camera. So it's being ready, I think, for something that happens. Now, when you're in Congress or you're the governor, you just are in different access that nobody else has. And here would be one example. And in the 2000, I guess it was the 2004 presidential election, President Bush and Mrs. Bush decided on election day, very unusual, to actually campaign and come into Columbus, Ohio.
Really?
And they flew in. It was a rainy day. I remember the plane coming down, rainy. And then we got in the car with them, my wife and I did, and went to Republican headquarters, and he did a little press conference and whatever he was going to do. But we were in that car. And so we have shots of the president and Mrs. Bush, president and the first lady, sitting there in that car. Now, nobody else had that shot. There's nobody in the world has that shot of that moment. And so, it's just looking, I think, for those opportunities. Now, I take pictures primarily, though, for family. We take a lot of pictures of our kids, and now a lot of pictures of our grandkids. Again, sometimes you see a shot or you see something that maybe nobody else will capture.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's got a camera now, right? 'Cause
No,
everybody's got a phone, and but sometimes you're seeing something that no one else is seeing, or that no one else is at least recording or taking a picture of. And a lot of times Fran will say, "Oh, look over in the corner."
Yeah.
The two kids are doing something. So again, it's being alert and taking a picture of something that you think is unique or different or just fun.
Yeah. And speaking of family, I had a couple questions I wanted to ask. When our first daughter was born, I started to think about things in a different way, especially for her education. Where is she going to grow up? And that actually led me to start a nonprofit where I wasn't like most students. I didn't go to law school. I was an entrepreneurial kid. So there wasn't really a trade school to learn media or AI and entrepreneurship. So we started a nonprofit where we teach young kids out of high school how to do those aspects of business, media, and AI, and actually implement them into the companies that are their internship.
Sure. It's great.
So what I was curious is, like, what do you see as the vision for your grandkids? Like, what kind of education do you want them to have so that they have the equal opportunity that you and I both had?
I think what you want is different experiences. I mean, part of growing up, part of figuring out what you want to do is finding things that you don't want to do. You have an experience and you say, "Oh, I don't want to do that." I work, but I think getting kids involved in working in different ways.
Like hands-on.
Hands-on. I mean, this past a week ago, we had such a great weather, but it was windy on a Sunday. And, Fran had two of our grandkids. One was 5 and one 7. They were out picking up walnuts and picking up all the sticks that had been come down, all the branches and things that have come down. And, I just think giving young people more experiences. I mean, one of the things that we really focus on a lot with Career Tech, we want Career Tech to give young people an opportunity to see what is actually out there. So not that in 6th grade or 7th grade they're going to be really doing that, but visits to different places and finding out what's really out there. I mean, when you think about it, many kids barely know what their own parents do. They know they work at a certain place, certainly, but do they know what they actually do every day?
Yeah.
So, having more of that opportunity, more shadowing people. I've had some young people just shadow me, go with me for a day. I don't know whether that turned them off or turned them on to politics or government, but doesn't matter. Either way, they've at least experienced.
It's good to know what you don't want to do as well.
No, it's exactly right. No, I don't want to do that. Okay, good. Now you know, but maybe you didn't know that before. Again, sometimes kind of the worst case scenario is someone goes to college, they think they want to do this, and they're into their 3rd year before they figured out, I want to be a nurse, but really I don't like blood, I don't like this, So we've really urged our state universities to give these kids more experience in their freshman year, some sampling of what they're going to be doing, because if they don't like it, they should be changing majors. I mean, I changed majors effectively 3 times. I started as a business major and decided I didn't really like that. I didn't like the courses. Nothing was getting me excited. And decided that I really wanted to be a social studies teacher. I loved history. I love government. And, I would have done that, except then I decided to go to law school, and that actually worked out. When I went to law school, I had no idea if it was going to work or not. Didn't know whether I was going to like it. Didn't know if they were going to like me. I didn't know. But it turned out I liked it. So again, it's multiple experiences. However you can get those, it seems to me is very important.
And I loved hearing your story, because your story is not very linear. There's turns and pivots, and that's kind of the nature of
life is.
Exactly. Yeah. You never know where you're going to go, and you have to be ready. I was really privileged to, sharing with high school students, I would tell them, look, I've had a chance to meet, for example, the CEO of Hobby Lobby and different successful individuals. And I was inspired. I walked into his office, for example, Steve, he was better dressed, or I was better dressed than him. He was so humble. And I realized that there's really no limitations of what you can become, especially in the US, as long as you really believe in it. And it's so important for these kids to have that belief that there is so much that they can actually impact, and especially into the future. They are the future. And whether it's, for your grandkids or my daughter, it's so important that they have that, continue to have that freedom, to have that true future that we would want for them to have. I was curious, looking in the next 20, 30 years for your grandkids, what do you want to make sure that they still have an opportunity to do as they're growing up that, we had at this time?
Well, as you point out, life is full of a lot of twists, not a straight path, not anymore at least, if it ever was. Look, I just want them to have the basic skills that they need. Sometimes we forget you have to be able to read. You have to have some sense of math. You might not have to be advanced, even algebra 2. You might not necessarily have to have that, but you have to have some sense of numbers.
Yeah.
And getting a sense of numbers, I think sometimes people don't quite get that, and so I think getting the basics and then having the opportunity to explore different things seems to me that's the world we live in today. I mean, the world of the 40s or the 50s was you go to work and you may stay in the same bank, you may stay in the same factory, you may stay on the same farm your entire life.
Yeah.
That's not true today. I mean, the world is changing faster and faster and faster and faster. And with artificial intelligence, the people who know how to use it as a tool are going to be ahead. And maybe some of the jobs that existed before won't exist with artificial intelligence. But there's always going to have to be someone there who can apply that, can ask the right questions, can, critical analysis, it will always be important. And whether you're looking at what AI has produced for you, what you've asked them, what's come back. You still have to have a critical analysis of that and see how that fits in whatever you're trying to achieve.
And with the future in mind, as you had just wrapped up the last State of the State address, and whoever the next governor is going to be, what would you want the next governor to make sure that they maintain in the legacy that you've already built? What do you want to make sure stays?
I think, to get right down to it, reading is just so fundamental to success in life, so fundamental to success in school, both. And I think the focus on that, we switched over a few years ago to the science, what we call the science of reading, sounding words out, et cetera. But if you look at the states that have done it, we hold up Mississippi. They've gone from like 49th up to way up by having the science of reading. But they're now in their 12th year. So, it does these things do take time, and you have to be persistent. In public life, I think sometimes we think we can get a quick fix on things. We can go do it, and then we move on, and then we've got to go do something else. When really you're better off just taking that particular thing and continue to drive it and making sure that you're getting it out. So science of reading, I hope the next governor really continues to focus on that. Something that my wife started was the Dolly Parton Imagination Library in Ohio. Make sure that every part of Ohio, kids from birth until 5 can get a free book in the mail. We're now up to 70% of the households in Ohio of kids from 0 to 5 are now getting a book or 2 books, depending on how many, or 3 books, depending on how many kids there are in that family. So that's very important. I think being able to see is very important. We have found that about 1/4 of the kids who, Ohio law requires in grade school that there be a very quick test to determine screening, they call it, to determine whether that child needs actually to get an eye exam or not. What we have found is the kids who it was determined, hey, they need an eye exam, of those kids, of that group, only 1/4 of them get an eye exam. There's no requirement that they get the eye exam. The school just has to test, give the kid the results. That paper saying the results may get home with the first grader, it may not get home with the first grader.
Yeah.
So we have now set up a system where on a trial basis with 15 counties where we're literally going into schools, and of those kids who determine need an eye exam, we give them an eye exam. Optometrist is there. If they need glasses, they pick out those glasses. They pick out whatever color that they want. They got red, they got blue, they got all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Kid picks that out, and then 3 weeks later or so, they come back, they put the glasses on them, and moving on. And so again, that goes back to we have to remove the barriers. And one barrier certainly is if you can't see that blackboard or that smart board over there, and you can't read anything, that's a problem. So these are the type things, the kind of basic things. Economic development. Ohio is rolling. We're hot. We just need to stay that way. We need to stay focused on that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm inspired by not only your story with long-term thinking, but I can see that is also what you wish for the next governor, to continue to have that long-term vision, because short-term we can't really accomplish.
No, you've got to be willing to carry these things out over a long period of time.
Thank you so much, not only for your time, but for your service. It's been a pleasure. And
be with you.
Thank you for making this state what it is and making it great.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.